Nietzsche, chapter 5. Nietzsche's last writings during the 80s developed vast schemes of world prophecy. From now on, only great politics will count. National politics, such as had dominated German thinking, parentheses, and in spite of himself also Nietzsche's, close parentheses, would soon be a matter of the past. There will be a united Europe as Napoleon had envisioned it. A decade earlier, Nietzsche had already spoken of the coming European League of Nations and the need for the organization of a global world economy. An era of several centuries had begun in which the one big problem will be the rule over the entire world. And, quote, there will be wars such as they had never been, close quote. Wars are part of the very nature of a state, and although he did not want to glorify wars for their own sake, Nietzsche considered them revivers of national strength. He also said that society is, quote, a means towards wars, close quote. In a way that is quite similar to Dostoevsky's nihilistic visions, Nietzsche foresaw a period of chaos, of untamed and, quote, entirely merciless forces, close quote. The masses will rule, the individual has to lie in order to belong to the masses, close quote. Barbarism and the fanatic energy will appear together with the despotism of the state, quote. Everything will be mob rule, close quote. Quote, the atheists, immoralists, libertines of all kinds, artists, Jews, and gamblers, close quote. But the truly strong ones will quietly wait, observe, and then fight wars such as there have never been in mankind's earlier history. The United States, of which Nietzsche had only the most superficial knowledge derived exclusively from reading, is only, quote-unquote, seemingly a world power. She will be, quote, quickly consumed. Well, yeah, he's right. Dostoevsky had prophesied in 1864 that the English would eventually abandon their island and that, quote, our grandsons, close quote, will, quote, witness the exodus of the English from Europe, close quote. Nietzsche, in a similar manner, gave England only 50 years to last as a world power. The powers to count in this coming struggle are Germany and particularly Russia. The most momentous event of the future will be Russia's appearance as a world power and force in shaping civilization. As yet, this vast country was barbarian. But the Russians can wait. Their art, the magnanimity of their youth, and their, quote, fantastic insanity, close quote, will be irresistible. Quote, Russia must become the ruler over Europe and Asia. She must colonize and win over China and India, close quote. Russia, quote unquote, can bide her time and follow the principle to proceed, quote, as slowly as possible, close quote. For a time, Nietzsche shared with many politicians the hope that Germany and Russia might become allies. But then, as though dark fears were overcoming him, he also saw the need for a united Europe to resist Russia. Whatever structure was to evolve, nothing would be lasting. The future would be incalculable, bottomless, uncertain. Our historians are nothing but the pawnbrokers of the past. They are always subservient to present powers and prove gladly that the current regime is right. In his low opinion of historians, he corroborated the dictum of Edgar Quinet, who in 1875 wrote in his L'Esprit Novo, quote, there is nothing so corrupt as history when it enters the servitude of the state, close quote. Lasting peace will come not because some weak-kneed pacifists will be successful in persuading us that disarmament is the safest way to peace, but because the strong and victorious ones will voluntarily forego their claim to domination and, quote, break their swords upon their own free will, close quote. A party of peace lovers will be the guarantors of world harmony. True aristocrats who will not defend themselves and not appeal to courts for arbitration. Quote, the true war glories can be felled only by a sudden stroke of lightning, but lightning comes from above, close quote. Yet for generations to come, the impulse to fight is important and should be preserved. It is true that war causes the conquerors to become stupid and makes the conquered mean. It also tends to make the peoples barbarous. But war also makes them more, quote unquote, natural. And they will emerge from this, quote unquote, winter of civilization with more strength for good and evil. A nation that forgets how to die is senile. In war, the individual does not count. Life must not be rated high. Victory is all. Nietzsche also ventured to express his vision of some of the disturbing social changes to come. He seems to accept some of Karl Marx's criticism of ruling society without making a sound appraisal of underlying forces and factors. He predicted in rather sweeping terms that there would be only the haves and the have-nots. Civilization or culture would be no force in this coming struggle. What it might seem to achieve would be at the same time the beginning of its decay. The people, parentheses meaning the masses, close parentheses, want nothing but entertainment and amusement, and the culture of the possessing classes was too shallow and cowardly to save the situation. In fact, the rich would be as eager as the present class of the poor to become socialists if they should find themselves suddenly dispossessed. Society, as it exists by the accumulation of wealth, is not the result of needs that have been overcome, but of greed and a quote-unquote terrible impatience. All roads should have been kept open to permit a modest prosperity for the small middle classes. Socialism will mean the end of progress. The socialists will bring about nothing but general indolence. They ignore the basic inequality of man, and the inevitable outcome of a revolution will be a boring mediocrity and the tyranny of stupid men. They will be a flock without a shepherd. Socialism is nothing but an ill-applied and misunderstood Christian ideal. It will annihilate all individuality and can be maintained only by force and terrorism because it demands a power for the state such as only despotic rulers possess. Democracy is a sort of quarantine against the pest of tyrannical ambitions. Democratic institutions are quite useful, but also quite boring.